Last week, a guy asked me if I'd read this book, Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. It's actually been around about 7 years or so, I think. And Angela Duckworth wrote it. And it's this idea of, how much does grit really matter? Passion, perseverance, work ethic. And we got to talking, and I, of course, began reflecting and sharing my story. And I told him, I feel like that's the only thing that's ever made me successful. I wasn't very talented, never been very talented at anything. But it was my willingness to work, willingness to suffer, that made me do pretty good at a lot of things, excel at a lot of things. And but I seized opportunity with a work ethic and a willingness to outwork people. My dad worked at cotton mill his whole life. The most my dad ever made in a year of his life was $16,200. Well, that's all the overtime he could get to. And all I ever thought about was which shift I was going to work. I was going to the mill. That was a foregone conclusion. I remember one time the clutch went out in his old 71 Chevrolet pickup truck, 3-speed on the collar. I saw him and Mom that afternoon in the kitchen whispering, talking. A few minutes he took her car and he went to the auto parts store, bought a clutch, came back. He said, "Jimmy, get your coat. It's going to be a while. It's cold outside." It was a fall day, I remember. And I lay under that truck all night holding a drop light so he could change the clutch in that truck because he had to be at work at 7 o'clock the next morning to make $3.25 from 7 to 8. That's how much he made an hour, $3.25 an hour. And it mattered. He used our grocery money to buy that clutch. And I remember we were out of groceries and Mama cooked a pound of cornbread every night, and we divided it in thirds and crumbled cornbread up in a glass of milk and ate it for dinner. I didn't think we were poor. There were people up and down that Redbud Road that were in worse shape than we were. We didn't complain. But discipline, this approach, I think about that old man a lot now. When I'm running, when I'm riding, the things that he did and said. Sometimes bitter medicine, but I think about him a lot. The Army discipline was easy for me because I grew up under his roof. He trained me without even thinking he was teaching. Being late, for example. I don't do late. I'm not late. I've never been late. I said there, we've all been late before. I don't do late, and I don't do well with others who are late. It's a lack of discipline. It's disrespectful to everyone there. We were 10 minutes early to everything, and if we were less than 10 minutes early, we were late. That's the way he ran the house. You didn't sleep in on Saturday. You got up and did the chores, the things that needed to be done. You didn't procrastinate. We weren't lazy. He didn't tolerate laziness. He didn't tolerate tardiness. He didn't tolerate disrespect. So I grew up in a disciplined environment. The Army was an easy transition for me. And that's what came along, opportunity. The only thing I ever debated with my buddies around the lunchroom table in school was which shift I was going to work because I was going to the mill. And one day an Army recruiter, Master Sergeant Williams, knocked on that raggedy screen door in Ranger, Georgia. He said, "Son, how would you like to join the Army?" That was opportunity knocking at the door. I saw it as a way out. I took it. And I applied that same work ethic there that he had taught me. May not be the most talented, but I'll outwork it. Running. My dear friend, Eric Putnam. He told me early on, I didn't like hearing it at the time, he told me, you'll never win a major national championship or anything like that because you don't have the God-given foot speed to do it. That's like telling a kid that's 5'10", you're probably not going to make the NBA. Right? But how far can you go if you're willing to outwork everybody? That's what Eric told me. How far can you go? Because like Calvin Coolidge said, there's nothing more common than unsuccessful people with talent that aren't willing to put in the work, that aren't willing to do what's necessary to be on top. I see them in business all the time today. We oftentimes will use Patrick Lencioni's book, The Ideal Team Player. We talk about are people humble, hungry, and smart. I see folks in their 50s that are coasting already. And they wonder why they got a bad reputation now, why people don't like working with them. They're humble, they're smart, but they're get in health and wellness all the time. I fly on planes with them all over the world, every week in, week out. They're winded walking up the jet bridge. God forbid they got to tie their shoes. They about to have a heart attack. I look at their head sometime. It's so red it looks like it's going to pop. Hardest thing they do all day. Tie your shoes. Out of breath, can't breathe. Because they quit working. They gave up. They lost discipline. That fire in your belly. I'm 54 years old. I don't go to a group ride over here and say, hey, before we get started, I know this thing's going to get competitive and fast. Everybody 50 years old or older, raise your hand because I got to make sure I don't try to beat y'all. No. If you're 25, I'm going to try to hurt you. I hope you did your work. Youth will only get you so far because I did my work. I don't miss days. I missed one day all year long, and it was March 3rd, a Friday. That's the only day all year I missed. I remember it like too clear because it's the only day I missed. Hurricane force winds. I got dressed, put my bike in the truck, was ready to go, and wound up not going. And then didn't ride inside, didn't train, didn't even lift weights. So I missed a day. I don't miss days. You can always do something. Opportunity. Talent won't get you there. It'll get you a long way. You should be down on your knees thanking God for all the talent you have every day. That was given to you. But what you going to do with it? Are you willing to work? Whether it's your health, whether it's your spirituality, whether it's your fitness and your hobbies, or your work, your profession, you still got fire in your belly? You still driven? Are you still willing to outwork everybody? Because success demands it. Demands the will to put in the necessary work to get it done. Keep moving.